Hi, I'm Zibby Owens, and I am the host of this podcast, Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. I am also a newly minted USA Today bestselling author of the novel Blank. I've created a whole community of book lovers around this podcast, a publishing company, reading retreats, a bookstore, and more. Learn more at zibbymedia.com or follow me on social at Zibby Owens or join the community at Zibby Readers. Paige Toon is the author of 7 Summers, a novel. Paige grew up between England, Australia, and America and has been writing emotional love stories since 2007. She has published 15 novels, a 3-part spin-off series for young adults, and a collection of short stories. Her books have sold nearly 2 million copies worldwide. She lives in Cambridgeshire, England, with her husband and their 2 children. Welcome, Paige. Thank you so much for coming on Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books to discuss 7 Summers. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
So tell listeners where the idea for this book came from and what it's about, please.
Hey, well, I've got a copy here too also. And as you can see, I have my stack in the background. So 7 Summers, I came up with this idea. Initially, it was going to be an idea based around sand art and stuff. And I remember pitching the idea to my editors, and my American editor really loved the sound of it. And I hadn't told my UK editor the same idea. I told them a different one. And somewhere, basically the idea that I ended up pitching wasn't the one that this was more my American editor's favorite one. And in the time that it took for us to all talk together about which idea I was going to write, I heard the song. I was just really listening to the lyrics of "'Tis the Damn Season" by Taylor Swift. And it just brought the whole idea together, like with sort of breathtaking clarity. Like I had 5 days between the time that I'd said, I think I could write this idea, the sand art idea, which is basically about a girl who lives in a tourist town and the same person comes back year after year. And then when I heard the song, basically I've flipped the narrative. So Finn is the singer-songwriter who comes back year after year, and my character Liv is the person from the hometown. And if they're both single, then they spend the season together. There's a lot more. There's other things. There's a whole love triangle. I sort of found myself wondering how long a person might put their heart on ice in a situation like that, and when they might be open to looking into new possibilities. And so the story is told across 7 summers. This summer, when Liv is opening herself up to a potential with a permanent love, and the previous 6 summers where you see her falling in love with this hot singer-songwriter, Finn, who comes back year after year, and they go through lots of sort of ups and downs together.
Wow. So the sand art, were you walking around one day and saw something beautiful in the sand and you're like, I should write a novel about that?
Well, I go to Portugal every year. It's a place that I've just been going to with my family since I was like 10 years old. And I was down there a couple of years ago and talking to a friend, and she was telling me about the beach where I used to live. I used to sort of have this house, my family did, have this house overlooking this beautiful sort of beach. And she said that a sand artist has been coming back every winter and drawing art down on the sand. And that just kind of made me think about, this idea of living in a place that is a tourist town. And in the case of 7 Summers, she lives in Cornwall, which is this beautiful beachside town. I decided I set it in Britain just because I thought I'd be able to identify a little bit more with a character who wasn't Portuguese. But she comes back, when he sort of comes back year after year to see her, I did have this same sort of idea about this character who feels that she can't leave. And in the case of, like the Taylor Swift song, there's that lyric which says, I won't ask you to wait if you don't ask me to stay. And I've made it, I won't ask you to leave if you don't ask me to stay, because she can't leave because something happens at the end of the first summer that basically roots her in Cornwall and with her family, and equally Finn has reasons why he can't stay.
And that totally took me by surprise, by the way, and I was like holding my heart. So anyway, big twist, lots of twists that I was not expecting, particularly that. But anyway, I'll leave that alone so we don't spoil anything. I will say though, the character of her brother Michael, it's Michael, right? Michael, the brother with Down syndrome, was so interesting, particularly when you talked about how when she was growing up and she got to age 12 and she suddenly overtook him in height, and just the balance of that relationship and the caretaking, and yet he was taking care of her by slipping her like Cocoa Puffs or whatever. I mean, it's a really beautiful relationship and one that we don't often see depicted in fiction. So tell me more about that.
Well, I wanted to have a reason ultimately for why Liv would feel like after what happens at the end of the first summer, she feels like she can't leave St Agnes in Cornwall, this beachside town. And Michael is the main reason for her. And although her perspective sort of grows and develops over the years, at the time she feels very much like she needs to be there for her family. And I'd never written a character like Michael before. It took an enormous amount of research. I really wanted it to be authentic, and I wanted the whole everything about it to just ring true for anyone who might have a friend or a family member who has Down syndrome. I didn't want it to be characteristic it couldn't be a caricature. And so I just did a lot of research, and in my sculpture research, Liv as a sculptor, I did so much research with this book. It was insane. I'm never going to write about so many subjects that I know nothing about, because I did so much research. But Liv's character, she's a sculptor. And in speaking to a couple of famous sculptresses, and I was telling them about the story, and one of these sculptresses, Hazel Reeves, is friends with a lady who'd been writing a memoir about her experience of having a younger sister with Down syndrome. And so I reached out to Hilary, her name's Hilary Standing, and she very, very kindly allowed me to read her memoir of her experience with her sister. And we also had a really good chat. She sort of pointed me in the direction of, good things to sort of read and watch, for authentic representations of a, person with Down syndrome. So it was super, super helpful. And Michael is just one of my favorite characters. Like, I love how he takes no prisoners. He's just, and I've had so many readers in the UK write to me telling me that I've really sort of captured his personality based on their own experiences of people who've said my uncle, he just sounded so much like him in so many ways. Aww. And it's been lovely. It's been really touching. It's been one of the nicest things about having this book come out.
That's wonderful. It's always fun to have a character with a modified filter, if you will. It just says what's on their mind, like what happens then. Like, if we all could do that, what would that novel look like, right?
I might have to think of that. I'll write that down.
Yeah, seriously. That could be the title could just be No Filter, and we could, I don't know, take it, run with it.
I like it.
Add me in the acknowledgments if you do it. There's also this whole, the high school quiet guy, or not even high school. Was it high school? You said 10th grade or 10th class or something. And I was like, is that even the same thing as 10th grade here? But
15. Age
15, yes. Who was this like quiet, reclusive, more, soft-spoken guy. And what happens when he comes back and they've both changed, and the sexual tension, and then what happens next, and how that carries on and on and on. But also that you lace it with this sort of foreboding, right? Like this warning that you have pretty early on. So I feel like I'm not spoiling too much, but that the mom had been known more about his mom back in the day and was a little bit nervous about the whole thing. So tell me about that and that setup, and how much to give the reader when, and all of that.
Yes. So there has to be a reason, again, why Finn can't stay in Cornwall. And so, when I had this, this inspiration from this song, especially this one line, I won't ask you to, ask me to stay. I was trying to think about why he wouldn't be able to stay. And so much of the time, like with characters, it's such a rich kind of exploration when you can delve into their families and what might have happened. So Finn's mum was a very troubled soul. She, she does, you find this out very, very soon. Like as soon as, you meet Finn, really, Liv remembers that he had to go and live in LA because his mother had, jumped from the cliffs when he was 15, and he has two younger half brothers and a really sort of, bit of a traumatic childhood. Mm-hmm. So he's a troubled soul. And then Liv's mother is a GP, and she was actually Finn's GP and the family GP when they were growing up, their doctor. And so when the mum sees that Liv is, with Finn, she's like, just be careful. I can't talk about my patients, but, you don't go through something like that and come out of it unscathed. And it could have turned Finn into a totally different person to what he is. So sweet, and he's so supportive of Liv. He's very sexy, I love the chemistry between them too. He's absolutely gorgeous, but he's not like your typical bad boy rock star. However, the emotional damage that his, upbringing did pass on to him means that he feels he can't stay in St Agnes. Ultimately, he feels like, I come back for this brief period of time, but this place is still so full of darkness for me and what I went through with my childhood that I will not live here. And so Liv has this situation where she can't leave. And I think as you're reading, you will get this sense of foreboding because, ultimately these two people are in this kind of impossible situation. As it turns out, maybe it's not as impossible as things kind of come to light. But obviously when you meet Liv in the present day, she is still in St Agnes. Finn is very much not there. And, and she's in this situation where she's basically drawn a line under the relationship. But she's a bit, jumps to doing that a little bit too soon, as you find out at the end of the book, effectively, ultimately she's going to have the choice.
It's so funny too, because I'm totally one of those people who always calls hotels and is like, okay, I'm going to be early. Can I get early check-in? Like I do that every time. And Liv, runs this hotel situation, not a hotel, like manages this properties, and that she's like so annoyed that this man Tom is doing the same thing. And I was like seeing myself in there and cringing. I'm like,
I know,
oh gosh.
funny. So basically, the place where she owns, like the house that she owns, her family home, she divides it up and she turns it into 2 separate apartments so she can rent it out and still live in the upstairs apartment. So that's how you find her in the present day. And Tom is the character who arrives on the Friday early in the morning, says, any chance, been here for a while, any like getting early. And the thing is, that house that she stayed in is the very house that I stayed in when I went down to do the research with my family. So it's
way.
It all exists. And I did the same thing. So I was like, the owners of this cottage are going to be like, oh yeah, she literally did that. I'm sure like everybody does that, right? You're going to wait till 4 if there's a chance you can get in at 2. And I always lived to actually go and get the house ready for him. And
I also feel like, what's the deal with like 4 o'clock check-in, 11 a.m. checkout? That's not even a day. Like how, what is that?
I know. Crazy, exactly. Yeah.
Should definitely get in and get out. Give us at least like 23 hours or something. But how long?
Clearly they're like cleaning lots of other houses too. So.
Yes, no, I understand. I'm just, from the consumer standpoint, very, demanding and whatever else. This notion of sort of waiting or separating your emotions by time, like the confines of time itself has to, be inserted into something that could go on. And the notion of having to wait, or are you going to wait? I feel like this is something so many people think about when jobs take them to new places, or the military, or, just there are so many reasons people have to be torn apart. And I guess it makes everybody who reads it think like, what would I do? Or how long would I wait? Or is this healthy? Or, what should I do? What's your general take on this personally?
I think every day as it comes, like ultimately, Liv and Finn say to each other at the end of the first summer, like, we're not going to be in touch because, and even going forward, they know that it's unhealthy to put their whole lives on hold.
Yep.
And especially in your 20s, when you are likely to meet the person that you might, spend the rest of your life with, to just be putting your heart on hold for a year. And she doesn't, like, they both say to each other, like,
yep,
but there's no cheating involved here, like they're sort of very much like, you go and live your life. And if we're both single, then we'll come back together again. And ultimately that breaks down at some point because, neither of them want to be with anyone else. And they both make it that very clear. And so they try to sort of have a long distance relationship for a couple of years. But that is just so hard in itself. So I think, you just wouldn't know unless you're in that situation, would you? At some point you might just think, okay, enough's enough. Yeah. And certainly, by quite a few summers in, like Finn's starting to really want Liv to be with him and she's unable to be with him. And he's like, going to have to choose. Yeah. And then, like she obviously makes her choice as well to pursue something with somebody else. And yeah, oh God, this book broke my heart. Honestly, it tore me into, like, I don't know if you've seen, like, I actually did like an Instagram live when I finished writing this book because my family had all gone away. I knew, that I was going to have to write the ending to this story. And oh, my computer, it just looked so dark and ominous on the day that I was due to sit down and finish writing, because I just knew I was going to have my heart broken. And I wanted to have my heart broken in advance. Like, I'm always inspired mostly by the emotions that I want to feel with a particular novel. And so with this one, it was like, I want to feel torn in two. I really want to feel this heartbreak. And then sitting down to actually know that you have to put yourself through that when you feel all of your character's emotions so deeply. And I do. I'm like inside this character's head for so long, and I've learned all of her loves and all of her passions. I know all about sculpture now and everything that she loves, and then to sit there and fall in love with these two characters and then have to sort of take her in one direction or another, and then go through everything else that happens, especially in the epilogue and stuff. I was in bits. Like, my husband had taken kids away just so I could lose myself in writing for that last weekend. And it was like 1 o'clock in the morning. And I was just like, I felt so alone with like no one to tell. And I know, I'll tell my readers. I just went on and did this Instagram live, woke up the next morning, was completely horrified by what I'd done. Like, faced, sobbing, like absolutely looked like the biggest mess imaginable, and went on to delete it. But, had so many readers had already watched it, like thousands, and, so many comments, and they were just like, this is how you make us feel. Like, so it's nice to see that you actually put yourself through the ringer too.
Oh, it is. It is. I think so many people wonder how the production of these emotions, right? Because it doesn't feel manufactured, right? You feel like you're riding this wave and it's inevitable. Like, you have to put it down that way.
Absolutely. I mean, I know that, I have spoken to some authors who are kind of like, I think to myself before I write a book, how can I make my reader cry? And it's not like that for me at all. For me, it's like, it's what do I want to feel? I'm living with these characters for so long. How do I want to feel? Because I love writing. Like, I love, there's nothing I love more than sitting down and actually getting lost in a story and feeling like I'm living inside this movie inside my head is my absolute passion in life. Apart from being a mother, that's my number one passion. But like, in terms of, everything else I would do, I would choose to sit down and write and to just be fully invested. And it's about going on that emotional journey with the characters. I love to put myself through all these emotions and things, so yeah, I absolutely love it.
Wow. And how did you get your start writing? Did you always know you wanted to be an author? And how did you build your career to where it is now?
Well, I did always know, like, the first job I ever wanted to do was to be an author. I don't know how young I was, but I was really young. Then when I was a teenager, I was reading magazines, and I was thinking, actually, what I'll do is I'll go and work for a magazine. And then when I have kids, I'll become an author and I can work from home.
That was my exact thinking, by the way, just FYI. Things never work out that way, but that was my original plan at age 12 or something. Yeah.
Well, I was so lucky because I actually managed it, like, it did happen. I went experience for a magazine when I was in my early 20s. And then I went and, as I became reviews editor of this super, super successful British weekly celebrity magazine called Heat. And at the time that I was working there, it was selling like 600,000 copies a week, and I was just reviews editor. It was a really great time to be working there. It was just a moment, really. And I'd had this idea for Lucy in the Sky, my first book, for a few years. And this girl who was torn between Australia and England, which are two places. I also grew up in America, so I could have easily said it in America and England or America and Australia, but I chose England and Australia. And she's torn between these two countries and these two men, this lawyer and this surfer, and one's older, one's younger, one's kind of like, anyway. I had this idea, and I just felt so scared, I think, of the fact that it had been my lifelong dream up to that point. I was in my early 30s and I still hadn't managed it. And I felt so full of fear. And then it just happened to be that this publicist who I'd become friends with said to me, you should write a book. You'd get a book deal working at Heat. I'm like, I have an idea. And he said, tell me. 5 minutes after I got back to the office after this lunch, I had an email from him saying, I've told, the managing director, Suzanne Babineau from Simon & Schuster, she loves the idea. I get an email from her saying, can we meet in a week? Now, over that week, I wrote the first 3 chapters, a 5,000-word synopsis. We met within 2 days. I had a 2-book deal. And I just said, why don't I write it by Christmas and we'll have it out next April? And this was September.
Oh my gosh.
I had a full-time job, but we did, and that was in September 2006. And, I released Lucy in the Sky in April 2007. Because of that, though, because of this tight turnaround and writing a book a year, I never stood a chance of having an American book deal because American publishers are books for a year in advance. And so that just wasn't happening. And I basically sort of, after 15 years of being with the same publisher, I did decide it was time to move to, see if somebody else could take things to the next level. And so I moved to Penguin. And now I do have this amazing, Putnam Penguin US book deal. So yeah, I'm super excited for Seven Summers to reach American and North American readers.
Oh my gosh, so exciting. Amazing. Well, Paige, thank you so much. Thank you for the joy of your characters, for putting me in the sculpture studio and inspiring me to make lots of sand art and, to beware of who shows up on your porch. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks, Abby.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. If you love it, please leave a review and follow us on social at Zibby Owens and at Zibby Readers.